Cover up your Sunday best, ladies and gents, because I am about to spill my Earl Grey. Okay, so do you guys remember that video I made last year about the professional fencer I dated who canceled last minute too many times, so I broke up with him? You're so vain! I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about some other professional fencer who also went to an Ivy League school. Isn't that all of them? Yeah, so that fencer got into the Olympics. Poop on my life, right? And so, I was in one of those moods one day where I just wanted to feel worse about myself. So like the day before the Olympics, I typed his name into Google, but what came up next shocked me. I mean, just shocked me. There were articles in the New York Times, in USA Today, in The Guardian and these other places that had said that 3 women had accused him of sexual misconduct. So I realized I wasn't actually super clear when I said sexual misconduct, and I think that's because the articles themselves haven't been crystal clear, I think for legal reasons. Some of them would say one thing and then retract it later, just to have another article come out that would say, just so we're clear, so-and-so has not raped anybody. But that's the language that's been flying around a little bit. You come to your own conclusions, but basically these allegations are so severe that he is being isolated from the rest of the athletes at the Olympic Village. Let's get back to the video. I will say that BuzzFeed News probably had the best article about him, and it was... According to 25 of his peers and teammates, he could, quote, turn off and on like a light switch, end quote, a former captain said. And at times it was, quote, very scary to be around, end quote, especially when he was drinking. It said, it became apparent, 10 sources who fenced with blah, 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 told BuzzFeed News, that he had a simple MO. Find the drunkest woman at the party, preferably a first-year student, and she'll, quote, do whatever you want, end quote, as one former classmate described. I got sick so many times reading this article that I just had to stop and breathe. That somebody would say that about women, especially in college, first of all, doesn't surprise me, but second of all, it's freaking sickening. And to know that that was someone who I dated, who had all these allegations come out before I knew him, but there was no way for me to know this. I mean, just it's nuts. I don't get angry about many things because anger kind of implies that you know the right answer. But when it comes to human dignity, there's one answer, right? There's one answer. It's treat other human beings with respect. They are not your playthings, they are not your toys, they are not things that you take advantage of when they're drunk. I'm getting heated. It's interesting because a lot of people say that these are just allegations, but after having dated him for the month that I did, I'm just gonna say that I believe the women, right? When I dated him, near the end of that relationship, he became emotionally abusive. Again, just to be clear, he has never been sexually aggressive towards me, but he has been emotionally abusive towards me. Now, what do I mean by emotionally abusive? I mean, this dude gaslit me, right? He told me it was trivial to break up with someone over canceling last minute too many times. He told me he didn't want to spend another brain cell thinking about it, and hung up the phone. He told me I had no tact, and then he would avoid talking to me for hours. And he also told me I was 100% in the wrong. And so what emotional abuse like that does to a person, at least what it did to me, I mean, I cried, right? I felt abandoned. I started questioning myself, and I started questioning well, do I not have tact? Am I overreacting? Would there be other girls who would be cool with somebody canceling last minute like this? No. Right? If you start feeling like that, it's not you. And that's what these articles did for me, is they made me feel validated, right? They helped me feel sane. And if there's one point that is crystallized in my head stronger than any of the others, it's basically that it is nothing to cry over when you say goodbye to a man who cannot meet your needs or disrespects you, right? You are not only dodging a bullet, I mean, you are waking up from what you thought was a dream. In reality, it was an actual nightmare. Let my life be an example to us all, right? On the outside, this dude looked like a celebrated Olympian. On the other side of things, he's an alleged sexual predator. Sometimes all that glitters is not gold. And the reason why you need to trust your gut in these relationships is that, like, for example, with me, my gut was telling me that something about this man was dangerous, right? I just didn't know how dangerous. But that's the thing. If you start feeling like your emotions are being suppressed by your partner, that might not be sexual predator level dangerous, but that is dangerous to your emotions in a completely different way, right? Because what everyone else sees on the outside will be shiny and glitzy and nice, but that will slowly be eroding your sense of self over time. I feel like I'm like self-giving myself a pep talk. Stop doing this, stop dating this kind of men. But that's the thing, right? Like, I've had a question, I'm like, wait a second, stop dating these kind of men. I'm like, is this a me thing? Or is this a them problem? Right? Because in my life, this is not one isolated case of this dude being emotionally abusive, right? This is a pattern of men who have been emotionally stunted and have ended up taking out their rage and their hurt on me in very harmful ways. And I don't think I'm alone in this, right, ladies? Right, women, this is not actually our fault. I don't think we are doing a poor job at selecting. I think we have a poor pool of men to select from. And I will tell you why. So as I kept reading this BuzzFeed article, I continued to become more furious and more disillusioned with American male culture. Let's give you another quote. A survey of women fencers conducted in 2018 found that of 218 respondents, 129, that's more than half, said they'd been sexually harassed by another member of the fencing community. Jeez, LaFudgin' wheeze. And I'll give you some examples. In interviews, 30 fencers, coaches, and referees described a climate in which some athletes say they've been told to sit on a coach's lap, have been groped in hotel elevators at tournaments, or threatened with violence if they didn't engage in sexual acts. Another woman fencer said she filed a complaint after a male referee had repeatedly stalked her. One night after a tournament, he cornered her in a bar and threatened to kill her dog if she didn't have sex with him, she said. Why is this happening in this country? I have started to become just so upset with the broader culture that allows men like this and the man I was dating to get off the hook with this kind of stuff. You know, and it's interesting because we haven't yet talked about the idea of rehabilitation. If this guy's name is smeared all across the internet, is that fair to him? What if he completely changes his ways, comes back as a reformed man, and now he can't escape his past? And I agree, there's definitely a conversation to be had about that. But we are not having that conversation today, and the reason why is because, like any good ex, I stalked his social media profiles, and I found things that made me feel like, you know what? This dude's never gonna change. Probably the biggest sign I saw was that his family and closest friends are still supporting him. So on his social media profiles, I was seeing things like, "We love you, man. Like, we know you didn't do it. We know these are just unproven claims, and it's so not fair that you've had this leveled against you." I don't know if you guys remember this, called "Why Does He Do That?" Inside the minds of angry and controlling men. But if you skip to page 365, very funny page for this, probably because we have to go through 365 days of this freaking bullshit all the time. It explains very clearly that it is very hard to reform a man whose family and friends are enabling him. It says, "I have noticed some recurring themes among those abusers whose changes go the deepest and last the longest. However, his close friends and relatives recognize that he is abusive and tell him that he needs to deal with it. They support the abused woman instead of supporting him. I have a much more difficult time with the abuser whose friends and family back up his excuses and encourage his disrespect for the woman." So if it's hard to change a man whose friends and family are still supporting him, what do you think's happening inside the mind of a man who the Olympics sent out to Tokyo? The whole country's a big enabler. This whole country is filled with good guys sending these guys into positions of power. This whole country is filled with good guys believing their guy could never do this to a woman, right? This whole country is filled with good guys talking about bitches and sluts and thinking that this kind of behavior doesn't enable these types of men. It does. It's tiring to date in a culture like this, right? A culture of these good guys. Because let's be honest, these good guys enable the fencer. These good guys have a little bit of the fencer in them, right? And so that's why I want to do this summer of sexism, right? Not to call out the fringe cases of the fencer who do these terrible things, no doubt, but rather to teach our good guys how to actually be great guys, right? Because if we had great guys, this fencer would have been stopped back in college as soon as his first off-color joke about women tumbled out of his mouth. That's when it needs to stop. Not when it gets to the Olympics. At the first sign of disrespect towards women. The first sign. This is about to be the summer of sexism, and I'm saying it now. No more enabling. That is, of course, with the exception of if you want to enable me to make more YouTube videos like this, you can donate down below to my Patreon, or please go watch more videos on my channel, or watch Summer of Sexism starting next week. Ciao.